Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so, if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hello, my love, and welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is a powerful leader and insane source of wisdom. We have Adriana Andelkovic. Andelkovic? Did I get that right?
Hello.
Joining us. She is an intuitive business and mindset coach who helps coaches and healers create 10K plus months with a bit of magic and a bit of strategy. She is also one of my besties and soul sisters. You have heard her voice here before. Welcome, gorgeous, beautiful, intelligent lady. Thank you for being here.
Yay. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Before we dive in, I have a question for you. Just thought I'd spring a little one on you to begin with. What's been the joy part of your day so far?
Oh, I love this. I always get excited when people are like, I have a random question for you. It's like my favorite thing in the world. Oh, this morning I woke up and I had seeing in my WhatsApp messages, a channeled business strategy session from my mentor and who she works with. And it was so delicious hearing all these pieces of where like I wasn't playing big enough and all these other things. And I literally listened to it and I went on a walk and I cried and it was amazing. And it was so activating and it was filled with so much joy. It was so special.
How fun. I actually saw this on your stories a little bit earlier. I can't believe I hadn't asked you about it before we jumped on.
I know. How dare you not? And it's so funny. So I was like, must tell Gemma. It was just so profound. It was so powerful and actually highlighted like places where I was playing too small, places where I can play bigger, how I can play bigger, like actually the strategy behind that. So, and this is what I do for other people. So for me to have it, it was just so cool.
And so it was your mentor and somebody that she works that did the reading or the channeling for you?
Yeah, so it was actually her assistant who is also an amazing channel, and her kind of gift is channeling strategy. And because part of what I can do is channel both the emotional side and channel strategy for people, it was so cool because now there's like two of her, one version of her that does emotional and one that does strategy. And I so love having that outside of me because I think it's way clearer when it's not just, self doing it to self.
I agree. That's one of the reasons I invest in coaches, because I think one of the ways that I explain it to clients is our neurology and our nervous system and our body is operating within the strategy that we currently know. So it's like it's all happening inside of this box. And of course, from within ourselves, we can stimulate and prompt to go outside of that box. But it's so powerful to have somebody who you've spent intimate time with, so knows you deeply, be able to reflect these things back to you as well. I'm super curious now. Are you open to sharing any little snippet of what? Or is
I reckon I can. I reckon I can.
Just something tiny.
So one part that I feel like is like jumping out at me that is cool to share is around the bigness, like the playing big, is around where my worry and overthinking brain and my own thoughts have held me back so much from playing big. And almost like I can be a little bit like over logical, and which is interesting because I'm very much both brains, like the creative, intuitive, and the logical. But sometimes because I mean we're lots of things happen to us and we're programmed or conditioned to worry and how much that's held me back from being like, I want this and I want that and I want to do it like this and no one else is doing it like this, but I want it to look like this. And that really hit home because I was kind of had that moment of, wow, what I've done so far is cool, but I can go bigger. And to have someone kind of call me out / call me forward on that, I was like, yes, thank you. So that was just so cool.
Amazing. Thank you for letting us in. Thank you for sharing. I'm excited to see where all of this unfolds because I very much, and knowing you as a friend, I very much see you as, you know what? I don't actually see you as a doer or an action taker because I kind of like the meaning or the connotations behind those words for me are of like striving or like pushing. Things just happen in your world. Yeah. And they happen quickly. So
yeah, idea to conception is like quite quick in my world, but I'm like, it could be quicker.
It's definitely your gift, girlfriend. Such a talent. Let's jump in, shall we, to the topic that we're going to be delving into today. Let's do it. It's one that comes up organically in our personal chit chat. And when I decided to hit go on the podcast, Adriana and I both felt that it was a really important conversation to bring to this space. It's something that we see both of our audiences and, to be honest, really women in general getting caught up in, which is becoming fixated on a message and forgetting to check in with themselves. And so what I mean when I say forgetting to check in with yourself, beauty, is that you see an opinion or a perspective that's gaining momentum. Yeah. And I particularly see this happening in the online space, on social media. And you begin following that message to a T because it does make sense to you. It feels aligned. But the bit that's forgotten is referencing what your individual needs are within that message. Yeah. So what parts of that message feel really good? What parts of that message can maybe be left behind for you or has a different variation or a different spin on it in order to meet your own needs? And when we forget that part and we don't do the reference and the checking in with ourselves, what's actually happening there is we're disregarding, suppressing, ignoring our intuitive knowing, the brilliance from within. And so that's the conversation that Adriana and I are here to have with you today. And so, Age, I just want to hand it to you to dive in and begin where you want to start.
Whew, this is so fun. And I will preface with saying, like, keep an open mind because some of these concepts, the first time I heard them, I was like, wrong, no, which is actually a whole story that I'm sure I'll get into. But I feel like a really fun / juicy place to start is actually around our cycles and our periods, because I feel like this is going to be a really like different perspective for a lot of people instead of hearing the same one all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny because this was a conversation that you and I had, gosh, a while ago now.
Yeah. At least 3 months ago now, I think.
Yeah, even more. And I feel like we were having the conversation, we're like, we've got to talk about this on a podcast. And it was really around that feeling of where are we still, for me, really, it's about where am I still giving my power away to something outside of me without even realizing. So a bit of context of how this showed up for me. So last year, along with what felt like the rest of the planet, I learned about the concept of, our cycles and our phases and our inner seasons and all these things that are incredible knowledge. Like if you're unfamiliar, it's the concept that obviously at different parts of our cycle, we have different energy, lows and highs, etc. And like anyone who learns something new, you kind of learn it and you're like, I'm so excited and I want to like follow this to a T, exactly what you said in the intro, which is why I giggled. And you know, if I'm not doing it, then something bad will happen, or like I'm having, I'll use period example, I'm having a painful period because I did this bit wrong. And already you can see in that A, it's a little obsessive, and B, it's a little power giving. You know, I'm not staying in my power. I'm not trusting my body to its fullest. Anyway, the year kind of went on, and I was actually at the time living in a garage. Long story, but living in a garage because we just moved states. And my wildlife. And Krista, my coach, reflected to me and she said, oh, you know, I just feel like maybe there's a little bit too much emphasis, like, you know, I don't even know how she said it anymore, like on your cycles and like, you know, on really having to do X in this time and B in this time. And if it doesn't fit, it's not going to be okay. And I had literally a complete breakdown. Like, I can't even exaggerate the level of breakdown. I wish I could. I'm going to be super honest. I threw my phone across the room. I actually picked up my boyfriend's Yui Boom, like those speaker things, and I went to pick that across the room. And he like jumped over and grabbed it out of my hand, and I just started to bawl, like sob uncontrollably. And bless him, like my boyfriend sat there just in front of me, cross-legged, didn't grab me, didn't change me, and just held space. He's like, you're okay, what's coming up? And I was like, I've been working on this for so long, and I've worked on my health for so long, and I've worked on everything, and now, you know, I'm being told that it all doesn't matter this much. That's how it felt in the moment. And one thing that I think is really important to remember here is one of the universal laws, which is like the pendulum swinging. Sometimes when we're healing from something or overcoming something, we go all the way to one end to do it like quote unquote perfectly. Then we swing all the way to the other end and we're like, I'm not going to do this at all, to find somewhere in the middle. And what I didn't realize at the time was I was actually preparing to find my middle. And I think that's what's the most powerful about this story. So what I realized is my middle actually looked like, of course, honoring when I'm fertile and the perky, flirty energy that comes with that. But it doesn't mean that when I have my cycle, it doesn't mean that I can't record a reel. Like, that doesn't suddenly become impossible. You know, that's just not how it works. It means that on the first day, I'm probably a little more tender. I probably would prefer if I didn't put my reels filming day, I'm just giving business examples, on that day. And that's okay. But it also doesn't mean my world will crumble down. It also doesn't mean I have to plan it all. It also means the more I manage, I don't love the word manage, the more I feel and process my emotions throughout the month, the easier my bleeds will be anyhow. Self-responsibility. Pretty cool.
Incredibly powerful. So powerful. And thank you for your honesty and sharing that. I absolutely agree with the pendulum swing rather, and almost accepting how essential that is, and almost that we can't really avoid that if we want to learn both extremes and then find our center. And I think as part of that, you know, black and white thinking can come in, and we can forget how resilient we actually are. Yeah. We begin seeing ourselves as completely delicate, or the message or the concept or the philosophy that we're attuning to in that moment. So if it is, okay, I want to be a woman who is really conscious and really responsive to my cycle. Yeah. We forget that we do have power in amongst that, and there is resilience in amongst that. And it's almost like we mute, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like our capability. And we as well as handing over the power, it's handing over the trust, from our body or from what we know to be true. And so tell me a little bit about what it's looked like for you in seeing that realizing you were at that end of the pendulum, swinging back and becoming perhaps more flexible rather than more paralyzed in the rigidity of a message that you thought you had to be successful?
I feel like it looks like two things. One is I prioritize so much, which you know about me, feeling my emotions in the moment on the days that
Mm,
they arise. Because the more I process throughout my quote unquote cycle, the less actually emotional I am come my cycle, the less moody I am. You know, all those PMS, all those symptoms that were coming up were actually just undealt with things and pieces from the month that I've just
mhm,
experienced. And I'm like, okay, there's some avoiding, girlfriend. And I go back. So I think that that piece has been really, 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 really helpful. And the other piece has been like, this is actually super interesting. And I almost just realized it, not paying attention to it so much. And
yeah.
it's not that I'm ignoring that it's happening, it's that I'm just placing so much less emphasis. Like in my calendar, I would have like spring phase starts and winter phase
Mhm,
starts. And it actually set up this preconceived idea that I had to feel a way, consciously or unconsciously, that day or the next day, etc.
yeah.
Instead, I'm just like, oh, today I'm feeling a bit of an energy drop. What could I do or change to honor that? You know what? I'm gonna not go to the gym and I'm gonna go for a walk. You know what? I'm gonna cancel my phone call with my girlfriend because I'm just not there like I thought I
Mhm,
would be. And then, like you said, that trust is like amplified through and through.
mm, mm. Such a game changer. Such a game
Right?
changer. For me, if I was to share from my perspective too, part of this exact topic or this exact message for me has been realizing, like, a lot of the messaging I was seeing on social media was around, well, when you're on your bleed, that's when you need to slow, that's when you need to stop. Even these concepts of going into moon caves and, like, you don't come out of your house and you don't see anyone and you don't speak to anybody and you're not doing anything quote unquote productive, right? And I've had quite a journey with my cycle. In the past, I would black out from the pain and have huge issues. And I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is no longer active for me because of how I choose to live my life. But yeah, so it's been a real journey. But I guess in the last 12 months for me too, I've become far more regular with BBT charting and just understanding what stage of my cycle I'm in. And for me, my bleed is actually one of the easiest parts of my cycle now. So it doesn't make sense for me to be behaving in that way or making those choices when I actually need to be caring for myself more, or going slower in the luteal phase. Yeah. Like, I know I cannot sit in a sauna to the same temperature in that phase. I know I cannot train to the same intensity or frequency in that phase. And if I was to follow the message, a lot of the message that's being put out there around the bleed stage of the cycle, I'd be disregarding what is true for me and what is true for my body and what I need and what my body and my intuition is telling me and showing me. And so, as Adriana and I are speaking through this, and I love, her awareness around for her that she needed to actually pay a little less attention to it. And I just want to flag, I guess, we're sharing our own personal experiences, and this conversation is not another message to be fixated into. Yeah. So if that's true for Adriana and this is true for me, something else completely might be true for you as well. So just wanted to put that little one in there.
Yeah, and it takes discernment too, right? Like it
Yeah.
took me time to discern where I sat with it all. Like it wasn't
Mhm.
the next month and I was like, this is how I do life now. Like
Absolutely.
this was almost a year ago now. So it's a long
Mm,
time to get to this place. And I discerned and I tried things on. And I think the biggest thing I learned, kind of following on from what you said too, is that it'll always be different. Month to month, it's actually
mm.
different. And the only way I know is when I'm in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One
I
of the
cannot.
things I am constantly reflecting back to my clients is you're the only person connected to your body, connected to your intuition. Nobody knows what is most right for you better than yourself. And it's just so true in this space because nobody has lived and felt and experienced the things that you have over the past month leading into and moving through your cycle. And yeah, life is forever changing. We're evolving. We might be in more of an expansive season of life, or we might be in more of a consolidation. And that is 100% going to affect things, as well as things that are outside of our control. You know, you and I were caught up in the floods in the northern rivers earlier this year. And gosh, my cycle was so long, and my bleed was so painful after that. So
Yeah, me
yeah.
too. So painful. And like, of course, I needed something so different in that phase to what I need in the phase I'm in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful awareness. Another, I guess, version of this theme that I've actually seen you talking a bit about on social media, on your Instagram lately, is this concept and this idea of, well, here's my language and my interpretation is of like what work-life balance and like trying to divide those two things up into different categories might look like. But I guess a willingness to do the work in your business and to fall in love with your business and your life. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So I'll start with saying super outright that I don't believe in work-life balance. And I think this is really interesting for a lot of people because we're always like, what's the balance between how much I want to work and how much I want to do life? And I'm like, what? When did they become two different things? And I'm talking about, you know, for anyone listening and for us, like being in your passion, being in your service, being on your mission, right? And it's all one and the same. The fact that I went for 2 walks today instead of 1 because I needed to process all my big energy was my work. It meant that I'm going to show up better for this podcast. The fact that I got my coffee and my lunch and I sat on the beach is work and life. Like it's not different. It's all one and the same. And I feel like when we look at it like that, well, firstly, everything just becomes easier. But secondly, we're focusing on what we love. And I love that question. Instead of being like, am I working too much or am I lifing too much? It's like, what do I love? What would I love to do in this next now moment? And if we are truly on purpose, work will be a part of that. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as creatives as well, our work, so much of it is the expression of who we are. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I can remember early on in business, I wasn't online yet. I was working in a clinic and I would get really frustrated when I would get caught up in actually these amazing conversations in the hallways between our treatment rooms. And I would just be thinking, oh, like I need to close this up. Like this needs to, you know, come to an end because I've got all of this work that I need to do, and then I need to do this, and I need to do that, and then and I just had this moment, and I can almost still remember where I was standing at the time, where I just thought, everything is everything. Like when I sleep and when I fuel my body and when I do pleasurable things, when I lay in the sun, all of that is feeding into how I can show up and how I can serve and what work looks and feels like for me, and vice versa. So it's very cool. And it's a journey, right? Like I'd be keen to hear some advice that you have for maybe some women that feel like they're struggling with this, where they can accept that that's true. Yeah, that everything is everything and there is no separation, but it doesn't feel like that for them right now. And they're struggling with that concept. What direction would you point them in, or what advice would you have for them?
Firstly, I would say I remember when that was me. So I fully, wholeheartedly get it. Something that really helped me, I remember I had a coach at the time and I was navigating this, and interesting coach, but anyway, this was a really helpful piece of what she said. I was doing cards or something like Oracle fairy cards or whatever, and I was like, oh, I feel like I got really caught up in this today and I didn't get my work done. And she reflected back to me, well, how does that not work? And I was like, oh, that really helps. So asking myself in the little micro moments, how is this piece affecting the next piece? How is sitting down and doing oracle cards for an hour instead of 10 minutes helpful? Oh, it's helpful because, and start small, it's helpful because it brought me joy. It's helpful because it inspired that idea. Another great one is like when we rest. I used to say, especially when I was learning this concept, I make money when I rest. And it was just something I said all the time. And then I started to see evidence of that in my life eventually. But at the start, I just had to tell myself that I make money while I rest. The more I rest means the more money I'll make later. The more I rest means the more I'll make money right in this now moment. So I kind of feel like what's helpful is pulling it back and starting really small, and then asking yourself in those little moments, oh, how is feeling my body like this helping this bit? Oh, I can start to see that now. And then our brain starts to like pull evidence from everywhere.
Yes, I was just about to use that word. It's finding the evidence, isn't it? And allowing yourself to get curious about that for long enough that it doesn't feel like a fluke. It feels like a repetitive pattern. I have had a girlfriend staying here with me this week, and we're on the couch last night having a conversation, and she said to me, how's your day been? What have you been up to? And I said, I actually just chilled out and rested so much today. I really, really needed it. I watched Netflix in the morning, and then I went for a walk and did some shopping, and then I took myself out for lunch, and then I came back and I had a nap, and I got into work at about maybe 2:30, and I had some calls and some things that took me through till about 8. But we're sitting there having that conversation. Must have been around dinner time. And I said, she asked me something about Instagram, and I opened up my app and I looked in there, and there were 2 new inquiries in my inbox. And earlier that morning, I received an email from a lady I'd spoken to the day prior, looking at working one-on-one together. And she was like, yep, let's do it. We're on, we're going. And it's just every time I allow myself to have what I need and to see it all as one, it just flows, and it's just so much easier. And interestingly, that word balance is one I do like, but I like it because to me, it's a feeling. Like when things are feeling like they're in flow, like they're easy, they're just unfolding, and there's not too much effort. I'm not having to push or force or manipulate and control things. That to me is balance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I often call it the worst kept secret, how powerful it is when we let ourselves rest.
I love that, the worst kept secret. And I feel like too, it's like the quote unquote balance, because obviously balance isn't a bad word, but it will always change. It's so ever changing. Like,
Fluid.
yeah, this week it will look different, next week it'll look different. And it's, for me, a big piece was becoming okay with that. Like, I'm the same. I'll wake up some mornings, I'll be like, I feel like watching Netflix now. It's like 9 a.m. And I just do, because it doesn't all matter so much. And then I'll have this inspiration spurt later on because I'm allowing all of that. So it kind of can look different, not only season to season, but literally during one day.
Yeah.
Like when we're following those nudges and those knowings, which takes time to learn as well, for sure.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the word discernment earlier. What about for women who are feeling like there's a lot of resistance and avoidance in showing up in their business, and maybe some of these things that we're talking about, like the resting or allowing themselves to spend an hour doing something where maybe ideally they thought it might have taken 10 minutes? What's one way that they can begin to distinguish between what is seeing everything as work and life versus what is bypassing, avoiding, resisting, not stepping into growing their business and expressing their gifts in the world?
One part I want to talk about second is the concept of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm going to talk about first is I love my brain. I'm like, I really want to go here, but I really want to go here. The first bit I really want to go into is the difference between our head and our body, right? And this is something that, by the way, I'm still learning. Like, we do not wake up and just like, oh, this is what my body said, this is what my brain said. But allowing yourself that compassion and time and love to keep practicing that. And then just noticing, oh, I did that thing, but it felt a bit icky after. Maybe it wasn't as from my body as I thought it would. oh, I chose that, but actually that was more of an avoidant or trauma-based or old pattern, old habit-based decision than I thought it was.
Mm.
And we start to like learn as we go and being okay with that. For example, I posted a reel yesterday. I'll use another work example, and I wasn't super happy with how it performed in the beginning. And I knew that my energy was off. I wasn't, what I wanted to post was a different reel, but it wasn't ready. And I made the decision just to post that one. And I didn't feel into my feelings before. I really try and process things. And then I realized that, oh, I didn't do that the way I wanted to do it. Like, okay, cool. What can I take from this and make sure tomorrow when I go and post or do the thing that I'm feeling much more connected to that thing. So we kind of start to learn and tweak as we go, I think.
Absolutely. And I love seeing it as feedback, almost like data collection. And we don't have to make it mean something. We don't have to criticize ourselves or loathe ourselves. We can actually just see that as, and I love this language around it. And I use this myself as, that's interesting. And now I can choose differently next time if I want to. It doesn't have to be this big deal or this big event where we get bogged down in it and self-criticize and then get stuck and shame ourselves. So
yeah, another language I love, because I think this is super helpful for people, is the word surprised. I'll be like, I'm surprised I fell for that one again. That's interesting. Really, Adriana, we're still there. And it's so helpful because I take the edge off and I'm just like, okay, girl, it's all right. Hey. So I think, yeah, learning these little word phrase changes is so helpful. And obviously this is without, being able to go into the deeper work of it. But I think even these things can help the ball to start rolling.
Yeah. And I love that that brings humor into the piece as well.
Yeah, you love that. I love that you love
that. It's so softening, right? Like
It
a
is.
huge part of where we get stuck is just taking ourselves so fucking seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So part number 2, were you finished on part number 1?
Part 2, yeah, I was about to say, I'm ready for part 2.
Part 2, hard work.
Is the concept of hard work. So I feel like in this as well, and you talked about the person that might be feeling a little avoidant or like, oh, this, do I do this, do I do that? And I feel like the meaning of hard work has gotten a little bit lost in translation. And when this whole like hustle versus only aligned action piece,
this is another message piece as well. Yeah, I love it.
Yes, exactly. From exactly what you're saying. And again, why I laughed at the beginning was I thought about this scenario too, because when that got put out, everyone was like, cool, I'm like never gonna hustle again. And it's only ease, flow, and alignment. And I'm like, cool, but how's your business going? Like, truly, I'm not sure. Maybe it's fantastic. Tell me a secret. And I think when someone says, like, I look at someone like my coach and she's just amazing and doing these amazing things and growing her business, she wouldn't consider any of that hard. But then where people get confused, if you can picture this, is that I feel like where they get confused is that, oh, well, she's doing it and it looks really easy and fun. So I'm just going to spend most of my day chilling out then. And then my business will grow. Yeah. What I think people don't say is that this is easy and fun, but I spent 8 hours today working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is easy and fun, but I cried over it yesterday because I was so confused on what to do or how to execute it. And then what I find is a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs come to me and they're like, but what I'm doing is not working. And I say, well, you're not doing enough. You're literally bottom line not doing enough of the output to receive what's there. Or you're learning from someone who's already done all that bit and they're not telling you to go back.
Yes. 2 things I'm really hearing there that I absolutely love. The first is one that I've learned this year, and you've been so instrumental in this and just like the best to have on this journey is like, sometimes it looks easy or it appears that it's easy for that person, like you said, because they've fallen and tripped and failed and not had it go how they wanted it to go, probably like 8 to 12 times before they're having the easy version that's playing out now. And it's so easy to look at that and think, oh my gosh, I should just have this by now. This should just be working for me by now. And that's been huge for me too. Yeah, where I'm like, well, I've worked really hard, so I would like the results now, please and thank you. And then the other thing that you just shared too, that I want to speak into just quickly is I think we have forgotten how short form social media is as a platform of content. And that is one of the reasons why I really wanted to start this podcast as well. And with this whole messaging and taking the whole thing and forgetting to check inwardly about what feels good for us, it is actually not possible. And I can tell you this because I create content for the platform, to include like every little disclaimer or every little like, yes, this is true, but also this, and this. It's just not a platform that provides for that. And so if we're using that as a primary source of our information or to make conclusive ideas, thoughts about what is true, what isn't true, what's working, what's not working, we're probably not going to get too far towards where we want to go because we have very, very little information.
Yeah, and how boring would it be if everyone that was posting was like, do this, oh, but also if you don't want to, it's okay. Or like, I did this cool thing, oh, but don't worry, I promise I worked for 10 years to get to this. You'd be like, oh my gosh, this is a very fun place to be. So we've got to keep all of that in context as well, for sure. I love that.
And it's marketing, I think, and I don't know whether you're on the receiving end of this much, but sometimes I feel and I see and would sometimes even receive feedback from an audience of like, yeah, but what about this or what about that? And just like you, I'm best placed when I get really clear on who I can serve and who I can help in a very potent, powerful way. Yeah. If I try and serve and speak to and help every single person, the message, it becomes diluted. And so remembering that when you're following someone or when you're watching their content, they are speaking to a specific audience and that might actually not include you. And so if it's not landing or if it feels off, honor that because it might not be the message for you as well.
Yeah, and there's take bits from everyone. My favorite quote, I talk about it all the time on my Instagram, is there's 1,000,001 ways to grow your business and all of them work. And I love it because it's true. And the person and this is the same goes for healing a body, the same goes for food to eat, da, 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 da. And everyone's talking about the one that worked for them or is working for them. And rightfully so, that is incredible. But it's also this reminder of like, trying not to get too caught up because how overwhelming is that? And then you see the next post and they're like, do it all like this. And then the next one's like, totally never do that. And it's so all consuming if you haven't built that solid base within you yet. So I think this is so important.
Yeah, I love that. What about, and this is a conversation that you and I frequently have as well, the messaging around feminine and masculine, like dynamics and energies and this is this and that is that. And talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Someone recently got me to talk in their private membership space about masculine and feminine in business because she's like, it's so fascinating how you speak about it. And I was like, you're paying me to talk about this? This is wild. But what I realized is my understanding of it, like a lot of the ones I'm saying right now, was quite slightly different. And that slightly different perspective helps us, again, not to get so fixated. So I find that for a lot of women I speak to, whether I'm in other people's containers or my own, there is this really big feeling of like, but I just always want to be in my feminine or whatever that is, or I'm just like too in my masculine. And what I come back to with them is that your masculine will always build the house and your feminine will always dance within it. And I feel like this is really helpful because it reminds us that we are we are both. And that if you tried to, I'm going to use business again, grow your business fully in your feminine, it would be chaos. It would be a mess. It would be an emotional roller coaster. It would not work, period.
Mm.
And so many people are like, I feel like they come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so relieved. Like I can have a bit of structure, but we don't get stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't stay so rigid in the structure that we stay and we're like, oh, it's all like in our body and, tense in our body. And when we have both and we're pulling on both, I think there's this energy of like, which one do I need more right now? Okay, need a bit more of this one. Oh, I need to lean back over here. And the other thing that I always talk about, which you've commented on how much I love this before, is like your masculine is leaning forward and your feminine is leaning backwards. So literally sometimes when I'm like, girlfriend, you're too in overdrive right now. I love how I talk to myself. I'm always like, babe, come on. That I literally just physically pick up my physical body and lean it a little bit backwards. And it just reminds me to like soften. It's okay. Receive. Chill out.
Yeah.
And those little things help as well. But I do see for a lot of people, they're getting so fixated in one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And the labels and the identity and what it means. And I know when I work with a lot of women, they come to me from the space of burnout or overwhelm or hyper independence, trying to do it all themselves. And then when they learn about the feminine space and that that's available to them, and that doesn't mean that they're pathetic or weak or naive. Yeah. It's all they're like, I think you used the word just before, there's this relief, but then there can be like this villainizing almost of the masculine, and I can't be in my masculine and I don't want to go over there. And again, like we were speaking before about taking ourselves so seriously, it doesn't have to be so serious. And we all start with narrow and shallow understandings of concepts, and that's okay. That is how we begin. Our brain and our mind wouldn't cope with like just being dumped with all the information about everything to begin with, and then there wouldn't be space for the implementation, which is where learning actually happens in our neurology and our nervous system clicks and shifts. But yes, I completely agree with what you're saying. And it's refreshing when I'm watching women, and I imagine particularly so in business too, when they understand that when you're working and when you're in your business, that doesn't mean you have to only be in your masculine. And also, yeah, it's not possible to completely be in that feminine energy and those gifts that entire time as well. So
Yeah, exactly. I just find it so fascinating. I had a particular client, little sidebar, is that she came forward to me and she was like, oh, and lovingly reflected that she felt like what I was asking of her and what I believed in was too much masculine and too much hustle and too much of all of these things. And I was like, well, that's really, really interesting. And it kind of took some inquiry within me to be like, oh, what is there? And I realized that part of it was the demonizing and the confusion around this rhetoric and this unhad conversation.
Beautiful.
So interesting. So cool.
It's one of my favorite things about you is the willingness to self-reflect when a new way of thinking or different feedback is brought up. I think it's one of my favorite qualities in anybody, but I particularly love it in you.
Oh, thanks, Kat. I appreciate it.
I have a few quick questions I would love to answer. I would love to ask you. I'll let you answer them.
You can answer if you want. So many.
Probably could. The first is, what's something you're working on within yourself right now?
As of this morning, let's keep it super fresh. It's my ability to go bigger. Like, I feel like I've accidentally played a little careful and small and calculated and logical. Ironically, after talking about masculine, being too in your masculine. And actually, I'm working on how to like play in the unseen, how to like go so big that I'm like, that makes no sense. That actually doesn't make logical sense, and I'm super confused on how it's going to happen, but we'll go with that. And that unseen, that belief in the unseen. And I didn't realize how much this like naive part of my personality that I loved had kind of fallen and died away, and really bringing that back online, but differently, like bigger and more fiercely. So I'm excited.
Amazing. I'm excited for this as well. You might have the same answer to this question, but my next question was, what's something that you're looking forward to?
So I'm looking forward to, actually, it's traveling more. This is something that has not really been on the cards for me, but it actually like immediately dropped in. So I'm just going with what I hear and feel in the moment, is like, I think because this has been slightly unavailable, actually like stepping into this, and we just moved to beautiful Byron. It's amazing, all the things, but actually, going back to Melbourne and exploring and enjoying different things, going to Noosa, somewhere I've never been before, traveling overseas, and that, which is crazy, I've never been there, and like booking tickets to go overseas, and actually starting to think about where does that trip fit in our year next year. And that's a pretty cool conversation to be having. Super excited.
So cool. And isn't it wild coming back into a space where when we look at a year and plan a year, there is the opportunity to allocate time for overseas travel again. It's very, very fucking cool.
So cool.
Is there anything else that you want to add to this conversation that you want to share before I ask you where our beautiful listeners can find you and connect with you more?
I feel like a great reminder in hearing stuff like this is to have a lot of compassion for ourselves. When I first started this work and the journey of where I'm at now, which is, a lot more bolder, a lot more certain, a lot more all the things, compassion was a huge piece that got me here. And I feel like it's so easy to oversight that, or that it's taking too long, or how am I still at this part, or whatever it is in your world and our own stories. And having compassion, and literally like I rub my heart. I'm like, it's okay, like we're okay. And I just feel like at the end of a conversation like this, or any conversation, I just think it's such an important thing to remember.
100%. In each moment we can choose love and compassion for ourselves and that little girl inside, or we can choose to hate on it and judge ourselves and loathe ourselves. And it really is a choice in each moment. Thank you so, 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 so much for being here and sharing in this conversation. I would love you to share with the women. How can they connect with you? How can they get in touch with you if they're interested, if they're business owners and they would love a little bit of strategy and a little bit of magic? How can they find you?
I'm all about the gram. I'm sure you'll pop it below as well, but it's Adriana Loves. Adriana with one N, I always remind people. And on there, I love just sharing everything. I love sharing lots of my life. I love sharing like so many tips and so much strategy. I love sharing what I'm going through, and I love sharing what I'm offering so people can be a part of it if that's what they feel like. And I reply to pretty much every single DM I get.
She does, ladies.
It's a priority in my world. So if there's, questions or things you want more info on, or any more things about me and how to, connect and all the things, it's all there. So much fun.
Amazing. Incredible. You're so, so gifted at what you do, and you've added so much value, aside from our personal relationship. The advice and the support and the guidance and the reflections you give me in business are just so invaluable. I'm so grateful and appreciative of you. And thank you so much for being here.
I love you. Thanks for having me.
I love you too. Bye. Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.